In the rivers of the west coast of North America lives one of the world's most interesting migrants. Braving difficulties of every sort, the salmon traverses rivers and seas. The life of a salmon begins when its mother lays her eggs in a stream. The first food of the young salmon is the special nutrient sac in the egg. A few weeks later, they are big enough to find food for themselves in the stream. As they continue to grow, they spend about a year in the stream. Salmon have been created with a system that allows them to live both in fresh and salt water. The reason for this is hidden in the miraculous journey that the salmon will make. On a spring morning, thousands of salmon begin to migrate down the river. The place where they will arrive weeks later is the magnificent Pacific Ocean. As soon as they arrive at the ocean, a genetic mechanism in the salmon causes a change in the makeup of their bodies, enabling them to live in salt water. In the next 1 to 4 years, they will traverse the ocean. Leaving the American coast, they will pass by Alaska, continue in a great arc in the direction of Japan, and return again. At the end of their journey, they are mature and ready for the final and most difficult journey of their lives. They will return to their home, that is, to the stream where they were born. Now they begin to travel upstream in exactly the opposite direction to the one they traveled years earlier to reach the sea. No obstacle daunts them. They can jump high enough to scale waterfalls. They can even jump 3 meters out of the water to climb over obstacles in their way. Sometimes they doggedly pursue their journey for distances reaching 3,200 kilometers. In the course of this journey, they eat nothing, using energy stored while they were in the ocean. Finally, those who survive, without fail, reach the river where they were born years earlier, and there lay their eggs. They have done their duty, and a short time later, they die. This journey of the salmon is one of the most amazing phenomena in nature. How is it that after thousands of salmon live for years in the sea, they can find the very stream in which they were born? In order to achieve this, they must find their own stream from among the thousands that flow into the Pacific Ocean. Then they must swim up this stream without becoming lost. Despite the fact that the stream separates into several branches in its course, the salmon must make the right decision at each fork in the stream and continue in the right direction. The salmon succeed in this seemingly impossible venture. How do they succeed, and why? First, let's consider the answer to the question, why? Research has shown that salmon have been created with a special sensory system to enable them to make this journey. They have been created with a natural compass that lets them find their way in the ocean by sensing the Earth's magnetic field. Thanks to this, they are able to find their direction in the vast ocean without error. But the basic question is this: how do salmon find the very streams in which they were born? For this, something else, a different system, apart from its natural compass, is required. Research has shown that salmon are created with a very delicate sense of smell, and that they can find the stream in which they were born by following its smell. We would not guess that a stream has its own smell, but it is true. Every stream in the world has its own chemical composition. Most frequently, the differences between the different chemical compositions are almost too small to be detected by any creature, except the salmon. One of the most interesting occurrences which demonstrated the salmon's ability to find its direction happened in the Prairie Creek Fish Farm in Northern California. A discovery made at this farm revealed an incredible adventure of migration. On the 2nd of December 1964, in one of the breeding pools, a 2-year-old salmon was found swimming with the other young salmon. On the back fin of the salmon were the remains of a special metal tag belonging to the Prairie Creek Fish Farm. This showed that this salmon was one of those that had been grown 2 years earlier in this farm and later released into the ocean. But how could this salmon have returned from the ocean and got into the farm's covered pool? There is a clue to how this could have happened. There was a box covered with a metal grill that opened into the overflow channel of one of the pools. The cover was broken. Could the salmon have entered this channel in its attempt to get back to the place of its birth, broken the cover, and entered the pool? There is no other explanation for the occurrence. But it seems impossible when you consider the distance the salmon had to go from the ocean to this pool. In order for the salmon to get back to the farm where it was born, it had to begin its journey from this point, that is, from the point where the Redwood Creek flowed into the ocean. Later, the salmon would swim 5 kilometers against the current and come to the first fork in the river. At this fork, it would make the right decision and go to the north, but further on, there would be an even more difficult branching. Here, the salmon would receive 2 very similar signals. The farm where the salmon was born was located right in the middle of this branch. The first choice for the salmon would have been to go to the right because the water flowing from it came from that direction. But for some reason, it chose to go to the left and began to approach the farm from behind. The reason for this surprising decision was to be found under the highway that passed through the area. Under the highway, there was a channel that collected the water that overflowed from the fish farm. Most of the time, very little water flowed through this channel, and leaves absorbed it before it reached the river. But this year there had been a lot of rain, and as a result, the water in the channel was able to reach the river. This weak current was enough to guide the salmon. It must have recognized the smell, followed it from the river, and made its way through the overflow channel, having to swim and crawl its way through the 5 to 10 centimeters deep water. And later, it had to find its way in a confusing system of water pipes in the channel. And even if it succeeded in getting that far, it would still have been stopped at the cover. It must have been squeezed in the concrete channel located inside this wooden track. But the salmon did not give up. It found the pipe, 12 centimeters in diameter, which connected this channel to the pool. It made its way through this pipe and finally came to its last obstacle. It overcame this obstacle by hitting its head against it with great force. So, at the end of this incredible journey, the salmon reached the little pool where it was born 2 years earlier. When officials of the fish farm realized what had happened, they wondered whether there were other salmon that had returned to their places of birth. In order to see what they might find, they took up the wooden planks and looked in the channel underneath. To their amazement, they found a total of 70 salmon, each with a tag from the fish farm. This extraordinary story of the salmon gives us an important proof of the creation. We can see that every stage of the journey made by the salmon was calculated. It is by itself a great wonder that there is a program that directs the salmon to return years later to the river in which it was born. Besides this, it is certainly not by chance that the salmon possesses a natural compass that allows it to find its way in the ocean, or that it has the most sensitive sense of smell in the world. All this shows that the salmon is a creature specially created for the migration decreed for it. The one who created the salmon with all its extraordinary capabilities is Allah, the creator of all living things and the Lord of all the worlds. One of the most interesting creatures in nature is the honeybee, which offers us a perfect feast with the honey it produces. Honeybees live in colonies in hives they construct with great care. Inside each hive, there are thousands of small hexagonal combs made to store the honey. In order to fill these combs with honey, the bees have to collect nectar from flowers. This is indeed a painstaking task. The latest scientific research has revealed that in order to produce half a kilo of honey, the bees must visit about 4 million individual flowers. Finding these flowers is in itself a difficult job. For this, the bees appoint some scouts and foragers from among their number. How do forager bees find the way to flowers in tracts of land that are vast compared to their own size? How do they find their way back to the hive without getting lost? How do they explain to the other bees the way to the source of the flowers? When we examine these questions, we come up with some very interesting facts. On the screen, you see a bee that has discovered a source of flowers. The job of this forager bee is to return to the hive and inform the other bees of the place where it found the flowers. As soon as the forager bee returns to its hive, it starts to describe the location of the flower's source it has discovered to the other bees. First, it lets the other bees taste a small bit of the nectar it has collected from the flowers, which gives them information about its quality. Then it begins its main task, describing the direction to the flowers. It does this in a very interesting way, by dancing. The forager begins to dance in the middle of the hive by shaking its body. It is difficult to believe, but in the course of this dance, the shaking will give the other bees all the information about where the flowers are located. For example, if the dance is in straight lines towards the upper part of the hive, the source of nutrients is exactly in the direction of the sun. If the flowers are located in the opposite direction, the bee makes lines in that direction. Look, now the bee is dancing towards the right. This shows that the flower source is exactly 90 degrees to the right. And this forager bee is explaining to his nestmates a 45-degree inclination to the left of the sun. But there is a question. The bees explain the direction according to the position of the sun, but the sun is continually moving. Every 4 minutes, the sun moves 1 degree towards the west, which would lead one to expect that the bees would make an error. However, observations have shown that the bees take account of the sun's movement. As the forager bees give directions, every 4 minutes the angle they describe moves 1 degree to the west. Thanks to this marvelous calculation, the bees never lose their way. The forager bees not only give information about the direction of the flowers, but also the distance to them. The duration of the dance and the number of vibrations let the other bees know the exact distance. They store just enough nutrients for this distance and then set out on the journey. This wonderful specialization of bees was tested in an experiment done in California. In this experiment, 3 containers of sugar water were placed in 3 different locations. Shortly afterwards, forager bees discovered these sources. The forager bees that came to the first container were marked with a dot. Those who came to the second container were marked with a line. and those who came to the third container were marked with a plus sign. Minutes later, bees in the hive were observed carefully watching these forager bees. Scientists also marked with a dot those bees watching forager bees marked with a dot, and likewise they marked other bees with the same signs as those of the forager bees they were watching. Some minutes later, bees marked with a dot arrived at the first container, bees marked with a line arrived at the second container, and those marked with a plus sign came to the third container. So it was proved that the bees in the hive found their direction according to information related by the forager bees. All these facts should be carefully considered. Where did the bees get their amazing organization? How can a small insect that does not have the faculty of thought or intellect act as a forager? How can it think to search out sources of nutrients and inform its nestmates of them? Even if it thought about it, how could it develop a dance technique to inform the others where the source was located and the distance to it? How can bees in the hive understand the meaning of the complicated movements and vibrations of the messenger bees? Darwin's theory of evolution, which claims that life on Earth came about by chance, has no answer to these questions. Each of these special qualities of bees shows that their Creator gave them to them. Allah created them and inspired them to do their work. This fact is in the Qur'an. Your Lord inspired the bees. Make hives in the mountains and in the trees and in what they build. Then eat of all the fruits and walk in the ways of your Lord submissively. There comes forth from within it a beverage of many colors, in which there is a healing for men. Most surely there is a sign in this for people who reflect. There is a remarkable kind of butterfly that lives in southern Canada. The famous monarch butterfly. Every monarch, like every other butterfly, comes into the world after having gone through a perfectly designed series of changes. First, the mother butterfly deposits her eggs on a leaf. The larvae that hatch feed for a time on the leaves before becoming caterpillars. Later, they make a nest called a cocoon for themselves. The cocoon of a monarch butterfly is a wonder of design. It is attached to a branch of a tree with a very slender but strong thread. The caterpillar develops in this cocoon and gradually emerges as a wonderful new creature, a butterfly. At first, its wings are flat and lifeless. But they expand as blood is pumped into them, and the monarch is ready to fly. There is a very interesting piece of behavior that distinguishes monarchs from other species of butterfly. In the course of a year, 4 different generations of monarchs are produced. The first 3 generations have an average lifespan of about 5 to 6 weeks. But the 4th generation is very different. This generation will survive until it has completed an 8-month migration. The migration begins from various monarch centers in southern Canada and moves further south. One group goes to California, and another group even further south to Mexico. It is interesting that all the monarchs meet each other on the way, as if they had received a command from one single center and continue together on the migration. The beginning of the monarch's migration has also been planned from one single center. They do not start out on their journey on just any day, but on that one day in the autumn, the autumnal equinox, when day and night are the same duration. After flying for 2 months, they reach the hot forests of the south. Millions of monarchs cover the trees like a tissue, and for 4 months, from December to March, they stay there eating nothing. They survive on fat stored in their bodies and only drinking water. The blossoming of the flowers in the spring is very important for the monarchs. After waiting for 4 months, they feast on nectar. Now they have stored the energy they will need to return to Northern America. At the end of March, before beginning their journey, they mate. On that day, the spring equinox, when day and night are of equal duration, the colony begins its flight north. At the end of their journey, they reach Canada and die shortly afterwards. But before they die, they give birth to the first generation of the year, which will survive for about 1.5 months. Later, the second and third generations are succeeded by the fourth, which will once again begin the migration. This generation will again live 6 months longer than the others, and thus the chain continues. This amazing migration brings many questions to mind. How is it that each fourth generation is born so as to live 6 months longer than the others? How does this long-lived generation always coincide with the winter months? How do the butterflies always begin their migration on that day when night and day are of equal length? And how are they able to make that delicate calculation? How does the new generation of monarchs that has never before gone on a migratory flight know the way? All this demonstrates that monarchs have been created with a perfect migration plan, and that they follow this plan to the letter. If there were an error in this plan, they would not be able to complete the migration. In that case, all the monarchs would have died in the winter and the monarch species would have become extinct. It is clear that these creatures have been created with this particular quality and that this extraordinary annual migration has been inspired in them. It is Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, the creator and ruler of all beings, who is the author of this wondrous creation. Human beings have experimented with many ways to fly. Since the first aeroplane was built about 100 years ago, thousands of different models of aeroplane have been developed. Countless numbers of scientists have tried to make better flight machines until finally they built today's flying machines with their wonderful designs. Flying is a great ability, but its usefulness depends on how well it is controlled. Actually, to be able to remain hovering in the air or to be able to land where you want are at least as important as flight. For this reason, human beings have developed an aircraft with a high degree of maneuverability. The helicopter. Helicopters can hover in mid-air and take off vertically. Especially because of their military advantages, nations have devoted unlimited budgets towards helicopter design. But recent research has come up with a very amazing fact. Modern helicopter flight technology is quite primitive compared to that of a very small, animate flying creature. This living flying creature is the dragonfly. The flying system of the dragonfly is a wonder of design, surpassing in flight technology all the machines created by human beings. For this reason, the design of the latest model of the world-famous Sikorsky helicopter was produced using the design of the dragonfly as a model. In this project, an IBM firm assisted in the design of the Sikorsky by loading images of a dragonfly in a special computer. Afterwards, taking the example of the dragonfly, thousands of illustrations were made on the computer. Then, with the example of the flight technology of the dragonfly, the Sikorsky model was produced. In short, the body of a small insect contains a design superior to one planned by human beings. The flight technology of the dragonfly and the design of its wings demonstrate a fact. This little creature shows us the wondrous design in the artistry of Allah. The dragonfly has two sets of wings placed diagonally on its body, allowing it to maneuver very quickly. Dragonflies can reach a speed of 50 kilometers an hour in a very short time, which is very surprising for an insect. An Olympic athlete in a 100-meter race runs only 39 kilometers an hour. There is one other condition of good flight. Flight is very dangerous if it is not supported by a very good visual system. For this reason, modern airplanes and helicopters have an advanced visual system. The Dragonfly, too, has a highly advanced visual system. It has a total of 30,000 micro-eyes, and every eye is directed towards a different point. All information from these eyes is transmitted to the Dragonfly's brain, which processes it like a computer. Thanks to this system, the Dragonfly has marvelous visual ability. As for the maneuverability of the Dragonfly, it is more developed than that of a helicopter. For example, with a last-minute maneuver, it saves itself from a truck coming from the opposite direction. Now the Dragonfly must contend with a double trap. It must avoid striking the windshields of the oncoming automobile, and it must escape the rapacious birds that hunt it. And it succeeds in this with a very clever maneuver. One of the problems pilots face, who often have to maneuver, is that after a maneuver, it is difficult to determine the position of the craft relative to the ground. After the maneuver, if the pilot is confused about which side of the plane is up and which is down, the aircraft may crash. Technicians have developed an instrument to counter this risk, the gyroscope. This instrument shows the pilot a horizontal line indicating the horizon. The pilot compares the horizontal line with the actual horizon and is able to determine the plane's position in an instant. For millions of years, the Dragonfly has been using a device similar to the one developed by technicians. Before the Dragonfly's eyes, there is fixed an artificial horizontal line. No matter at what angle it flies, it always holds its head parallel to the horizontal line. When the Dragonfly's body changes its position during flight, hairs between its body and its head are stimulated. The nerve cells at the root of these hairs send information to the Dragonfly's flight muscles about the insect's position in the air. Thanks to this, the flying muscles automatically adjust the number and speed of the wing movements. So, in even the most difficult maneuvers, the Dragonfly never loses its direction or its control. This system is indeed a wonder of engineering. At this point, an intelligent person will start to think. The Dragonfly is not even aware of the extraordinary system it possesses. Who placed in the body of this insect such complex flight systems that even expert engineers have taken them as models? Who endowed this insect with its perfect wings, the motors that drive the wings, and the superior visual system? Who is the author of this excellent design? The Darwinist theory of evolution, which tries to account for life by coincidences, is silent when confronted with these questions. It is impossible that the system in the body of the Dragonfly could have come about by evolution, that is, in a stage-by-stage development through chance. The reason for this is that for a living thing to survive, all these systems must exist at the same time and completely. The first Dragonfly in the world must have appeared with the same wonderful mechanisms possessed by these same insects today. The fossil record of natural history confirms this. The fossil record shows that dragonflies appeared on Earth all at once. The earliest known fossil of a dragonfly is 320 million years old. In the fossil strata of earlier periods, there is nothing that resembles a dragonfly. Moreover, since the time the dragonfly appeared, the fossil record shows that it has undergone no evolution. The oldest fossils of dragonflies are completely the same as those same insects living today. Between the 140 million-year-old fossil that you are looking at and the present-day dragonfly beside it, there is no difference at all. These facts once again prove the invalidity of the theory of evolution and shows how both the dragonfly and all other living things in the world came to be. Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, created all living creatures, and every living thing is a proof of His existence. Apart from Allah, there is no other power strong enough to create even a fly. This fact is revealed by Allah in the Qur'an in these words. Mankind, an example has been made, so listen to it carefully. Those whom you call upon besides Allah are not even able to create a single fly, even if they were to join together to do it. And if a fly steals something from them, they cannot get it back. How feeble are both the seeker and the sought. The creatures we have examined throughout this film are only a few of the wonders of creation found in nature. In truth, Allah endows all living things in nature with their wonderful peculiarities, and each one is a proof that shows Allah's artistry and power. It is important to be able to see this wonderful creation in nature and to grasp its purpose. Allah wants us to think about creation and to draw conclusions from it. In a verse of the Qur'an, Allah says, "Say, travel about the earth and see how He brought creation out of nothing. Then later Allah will bring about the next existence. Allah has power over all things." Thomas Edison was one of the world's great scientists. Some 120 years have passed since he invented the light bulb, during which time it has become completely indispensable. Today, millions of tiny bulbs such as this one work together to illuminate huge cities. Light has become one of the most important symbols of this civilization. However, there is another source of light. Let us now concentrate on this tiny light shining in the dark. It is powerful and effective. However, the source of this light is very different from the bulb. In fact, it is not a thing at all, but a creature, A firefly. This tiny creature produces light within its body, yet it possesses no bulb. Nor does it use electricity, yet it possesses an even more powerful technology. It is more effective than a bulb, which turns only 10% of the energy that reaches it into light. The other 90% turning into heat and disappearing. The firefly, on the other hand, produces nearly 100% light from its energy. The reason for this is the flawless design of its light production system. Its body contains a special chemical called luciferin and an enzyme by the name of luciferase. When light is to be produced, these two chemicals combine and in their combination emit energy in the form of light. These complex molecules have been specially designed to emit light. The place of every atom that makes up these molecules has been established in accordance with this plan. There is no doubt that this biochemical design is no coincidence. It has been specially created in the same way as Allah has given all living things their own different qualities. So has He taught the firefly how to create light. So, what does the firefly do with the light it creates through such an advanced technology? In order to find the answer to that question, we must examine closely a swarm of fireflies. Those images make us feel we are walking beneath the stars. However, what you are seeing are not stars, but hundreds of thousands of fireflies. These lights are of great importance to fireflies. Communication. Throughout history, man has employed various means to communicate. One of these is Morse code, which consists of mixed short and long signals and is used in telegrams. Fireflies use light signals to communicate in a similar way to Morse code. The male firefly turns his light on and off to send a message to the female. This message contains a particular code, and the female uses the same code to send a message back to the male. As a result of these reciprocal messages, males and females come together. From the moment it is born, each firefly knows how to send messages in this manner and how to understand the messages sent by other fireflies. In short, each of the thousands of fireflies we see together on dark nights is a wonder of design. The creator of this extraordinary system is Allah, the creator of all living things. Some nights in the Bermuda Gulf, a light show takes place. Sometime after the sun has set, fascinating lights appear on the surface of the water. These lights belong to surfacing female sea worms. The female mixes two chemical liquids that she produces in her body. These creatures know, in a miraculous way, how to use chemicals to produce light. The end result is this light show. The females do this in order to attract the attention of males. The creatures approaching with small bright lights are male sea worms. Ten minutes later, the surface is covered with hundreds of females emitting bright lights. If the moon comes out from behind the clouds and illuminates the water, they go back down into the depths of the ocean. 20 minutes later, the show is over. If we wish to see the real place where animals use light to communicate, then we have to go to the darkest place on Earth, the depths of the ocean. This submarine was specially designed to be able to dive to depths of some 600 meters. The sun's rays cannot penetrate below 200 meters. Here is the darkest place on Earth. The pressure is 20 times higher than that at sea level. You might think that nothing could live in these conditions. Yet a fascinating picture emerges when a light signal is given from outside the sub. What you see are living things that reply to light, with light, and that communicate by means of producing light in this darkness. Looking at these creatures close up, you see the magnificent art of Allah's creation. These amazing creatures giving off this red light are a species of jellyfish. The light show from another species higher up is just like an art gallery. The lights of the sub need to be turned off to fully appreciate the show. Here is a wonderful creature which shines with the light it itself produces. This is another sea creature that swims around emitting light. Nobody knows what these lights signify. These creatures are all jellyfish. Their bodies are soft and flaccid. None of them possess reason or intelligence, nor do they know how the light in their bodies is formed. It is completely irrational to think that such complex creatures possessing such delicate systems could have come into being by chance. There is no doubt that these creatures were created to a special design. That is why this light show from hundreds of meters below the surface of the sea reveals to us Allah's infinite might and artistry. That is why this light show from hundreds of meters beneath the surface of the sea reveals to us God's infinite might and artistry. He creates uniquely. Everything on the earth and in the oceans belongs to Him, and He possesses infinite wisdom and knowledge. In a verse it is said, He is Allah, the Creator, the Maker, the giver of form. To him belong the most beautiful names. Everything in the heavens and earth glorifies him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise. Everybody has seen the tiny creature known as the spider many times in his life. Perhaps in the house, out in the countryside, or in the garden. This tiny creature attracts very few people's serious attention, yet it is one of the perfect manifestations of Allah's art of creation. We shall have to examine the spider a little closer in order to see this. The first thing that comes to mind when one thinks about spiders are their webs. These webs are marvels of design. A spider's web contains its own architectural blueprint and the engineering calculations to accompany it. If we enlarge the spider to the size of a human being, the web it weaves would be around 150 meters high. That is the same height as a 50-story skyscraper. If a spider were so large as to be capable of making a 50-meter wide web, the web would be strong enough to stop even a jumbo jet. So, how do spiders weave webs with these properties? In order to succeed, the spider first needs to draw up a blueprint, just like an architect. That is because an architectural structure of such size and strength is impossible without a blueprint. After the blueprint has been ready, the spider needs to calculate what loads will be placed on what areas of the web, just like a construction engineer. Otherwise, the web would just collapse. When one considers how the spider weaves its web, a real miracle emerges. The spider first casts a silk it has spun into the air, and air currents then carry it to a fixed point where it can stick. Then the construction work begins. It can take an hour or more to weave a web. You are now watching the process speeded up by a factor of 60. The spider first pulls strong, tense threads from the center outwards, thus preparing the skeleton of the web. It then uses a loose and sticky thread to complete links from the outside in. And now the trap is ready. The thread the spider uses is just as much a miracle as the web itself. Spider silk is 5 times stronger than a steel thread of the same thickness. It has a tensile force of 150,000 kilograms per square meter. If a rope 30 centimeters in diameter were made out of spider silk, it could bear the weight of 150 cars. Scientists took spider silk as a model when producing the substance known as Kevlar, which is used in the production of bulletproof jackets. A bullet traveling at 150 meters a second can tear apart most things with which it comes into contact, but not fabric made from Kevlar. Spider silk, however, is 10 times stronger than Kevlar. It is also thinner than human hair, lighter than cotton, and stronger than steel, and is recognized as the strongest material in the world. Steel, which is one of the strongest materials available to man, is produced in heavy industrial facilities using iron in furnaces at temperatures of thousands of degrees. It is specially designed to be highly resistant and is used in wide structures, tall buildings, and to build bridges. The spider produces a material that is 5 times stronger than steel, yet it possesses neither furnaces nor technology. It is a tiny creature with no intellectual ability. It is a great miracle that a tiny creature like that should produce a thread tougher than steel and erect structures using this thread in the same way as architects and engineers do. People generally think of spiders as creatures that use webs to catch their prey. This species, called Dinopis, however, does not wait for the prey to get caught in the web, but constructs a moving trap. It produces special threads by making 200 brush strokes a minute. It then adds the threads to each other in an intelligent plan. Then the deadly trap is ready. It lies in ambush in a place where insects frequently pass. Its sharp eyes make out the slightest movement. It then wraps its prey up in special silk. The spider catches more than one victim in a night and weaves a separate web for each one. This web is a real wonder of design. The prey has no chance to escape. The hunting method of the bolas spider is another miracle of creation. This spider uses an irresistible method for attracting its prey, the male moth. Again, it produces a thread that is stronger than steel inside its body. This thread is covered with sticky droplets. It then dangles the thread from a tree as if it were a fishing rod, making little casts and waiting patiently, just like an angler. The spider has an ingenious trick for attracting its prey. Female moths release the hormone pheromone to attract male moths to them. The spiders reproduce this smell and place it at the end of their traps. The male moth cannot resist the trap. When the moth approaches, the spider starts to wave the thread like a lasso. And the plan has worked. The prey is caught. On the screen, you can now see the chemical formula of the pheromone given off by female moths. The substance has a distinct chemical formula and is only to be found in female moths. We would have to go through a number of stages in an advanced chemical laboratory if we wanted to reproduce the same chemical. If we imagine the spider uses its own intelligence to reproduce this hormone, then it would have to follow the same path. It would first have to find a female moth and learn how it attracts male moths. It would then have to take a sample of the pheromone from the female moth. It would have to study it, and carry out lab tests according to the formula it finds. Then it would have to attach the resulting chemical to the end of its lasso. However, this tiny spider possesses neither the intelligence to follow such a procedure, nor the education, nor a chemical laboratory. So how has this spider managed to reproduce that pheromone just like a chemist? How did it come to think of sticking it on the end of its thread? Such questions lead us to an evident truth. The chemical pheromone, the moths that produce it, and the spiders that use it for hunting were all brought into being by Allah. These examples once again reveal the art of creation of Allah, Lord of the entire universe and of all living things in it. Another species that uses a very intelligent technique to catch its prey is the trapdoor spider. Instead of using a web like other spiders, this species attacks from beneath the ground. It first digs itself a burrow in the ground and then makes a round cover for its lair using silk and pieces of earth. It sticks one edge of the cover to the ground like a hinge. It stretches taut threads outward from its lair. and then camouflages the threads and the entrance to its lair with earth or leaves. Thanks to this system, it can feel the smallest vibration outside its lair and head straight for the source of it. The trap is now ready. The insect approaches with no idea that anything is wrong and falls prey to the spider. Here, an ant is confidently walking over flowers. This flower is the spider's booby trap. But how could a spider with no power of thought and reasoning have had the idea of preparing a trap and then installing an early warning system outside it? Who taught it to hide its lair by imitating the flowers on the ground? And what is even more interesting is the fact that every spider born knows its own species' hunting technique. This young bolus spider has made its first lasso. The spider is even smaller than your fingertip, and the lasso tinier than the head of a pin. This newly born Dinopus spider has woven a miniature web. The baby spider is an engineer from the moment it comes into the world. The presence of a number of young in a small area can lead to small hitches. But eventually everything starts to function like clockwork. These baby spiders will soon leave their mother to make their own nests. There is no doubt that this shows that spiders are inspired to weave webs and build traps. Neither is there any doubt that it was Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, who creates these creatures with these wonderful features and inspires them what to do. (55°C) is a baking hot temperature. Endless sand dunes stretch away into the distance. There are sandstorms that swallow up everything they come across and make breathing impossible. The desert means inevitable death for an unprotected human being caught in it. Only vehicles specially built for the purpose can survive in these desert conditions. Any vehicle intended to work in the baking conditions of the desert has to be designed to withstand them and to be impervious to sandstorms. Furthermore, it has to be able to travel long distances with very little fuel and consuming little water. The machine best able to withstand these difficult conditions is not a vehicle at all, but an animal. The camel has served desert peoples throughout history and has almost become a symbol of the desert. The heat of the desert is deadly to other creatures. Apart from a few insects, reptiles, and some other tiny animals, no animal can live there. The camel is the only large creature to survive there. Allah has created it especially to live in the desert and to serve mankind. In fact, Allah draws attention to the creation of the camel in the verse, "Have they not looked at the camel, how it was created?" When we look at how the camel was created, we see that every detail of it is a miracle of creation. The most important thing in the burning heat of the desert is to drink, but it is difficult to find water there. It is also practically impossible to find anything to eat in the endless sand. That being the case, any animal that can live there has to be able to withstand hunger and thirst. And indeed, the camel has been created resistant to both. The camel can survive up to 8 days in 50 degrees temperatures without eating or drinking. When the camel, which can go without drinking for long periods, does find a source of water, it stores it up. Camels can drink up to 1/3 of their body weight of water in 10 minutes. That means up to 130 liters in one go. The storage area is the camel's hump. Some 40 kilograms of fat are stored there. Thanks to this, the camel can travel for days in the desert without eating anything. Most of the food sources in the desert are dry and thorny. Yet the camel's digestive system has been created according to these harsh conditions. The animal's teeth and lips are constructed to enable the animal to eat even sharp thorns with ease. Its stomach, which has a special design of its own, is strong enough to digest almost all plants in the desert. Desert winds suddenly arise, generally in the wake of sandstorms. The sharp sand suffocates and blinds. But Allah has created a special protective system in the camel to enable it to withstand these difficult conditions. The eyelids of the camel protect the animal's eyes from dust and grains of sand. However, they are also transparent, and that enables it to see even with its eyes closed. Its long, thick eyelashes are created so as to prevent dust from getting into the eyes. There is also a special design in the camel's nose. When sandstorms blow, it closes its nostrils with special lids. One of the greatest dangers facing any vehicle traveling in the desert is becoming stuck in the sand. But no such danger faces the camel, even though it carries loads weighing hundreds of kilograms, because the camel's feet are specially created for the desert. The animal's wide toes stop it sinking into the sand and function like snowshoes. Its long legs keep its body away from the burning heat of the desert floor. Its body is covered in thick, hard fur. This protects the animal both from the burning rays of the sun and from the desert chill after the sun sets. Some parts of its body are covered in thick protective layers of skin. These thick layers are placed in those regions that will come into contact with the ground when it sits on the scorching sand. This prevents the camel's skin from burning. These thick layers of skin are not calluses that develop over time. The camel is born with them. This special design brings out the perfection of creation in the camel. Let us consider all the features of the camel at which we have been looking. The special system that enables it to withstand thirst, the humps that enable it to go without eating, its foot structure that stops it sinking into the sand, its transparent eyelids and the eyelashes that protect its eyes from the sand, its nose with its special anti-sandstorm design, the structure of its mouth, lips and teeth, which enables it to eat thorns and desert plants, its digestive system that permits it to digest almost anything, the special calluses that protect its skin from the scorching sand, the specially designed fur that protects it from both hot and cold. None of these can be explained by the logic of the theory of evolution, and these and all its other features reveal one evident truth. The camel was specially created by Allah to live in the desert and serve the people there. In this film, we have engaged in a voyage from the depths of the oceans to scorching deserts and Amazon rainforests. The creatures we have seen on that voyage have allowed us to witness a very important fact. The might of Allah and the splendor of His creation are manifest in all corners of the world, and His wisdom encompasses everything. Allah reveals this in a verse. Your only deity is Allah. There is no deity but Him. He encompasses all things in His knowledge. Allah has created all animate beings with features that differ according to the environment in which they live. Every living thing uses these features to protect itself or to hunt. Some conceal themselves with expert techniques of camouflage. Some turn to mimicry, and others employ different intelligent tactics. You are about to see some fascinating animal features in this film, and will watch examples of the art of Allah's creation in nature. Camouflage is an unchanging element of military life. It is most important to be able to attack the enemy without alerting them or conceal oneself during an attack. The fascinating thing is that not only human beings possessing the power of reason employ this technique, which humanly requires detailed preparation, but animals too. The bodies of those animals that employ camouflage are created with colors and designs that blend in completely with the environment in which they live. Some of these animals blend in so well that it is almost impossible to distinguish them from surrounding flora and foliage. A spider of the same color as the plant on which it lives. A snake that is as motionless as a branch. An insect whose wings are the same color as dry leaves. A frog that takes on the same shape and color as surrounding plants around it. All these are fascinating examples of camouflage. They show us that camouflage is a specially created technique. The colors and designs of some animate beings match the flora among which they live. It is very difficult to distinguish a tiger hiding among yellow vegetation. Lions are created with the same color as the plains on which they live. They can easily conceal themselves among the vegetation. Just like a camouflaged soldier, they slowly creep up on their prey. Thanks to its natural camouflage, the cheetah is also able to approach its prey unnoticed. By the time its quarry sees it, it is much too late. Some masters of camouflage live at the poles, the coldest regions on Earth. We will shortly be seeing the extraordinary camouflage of a bird that survives in such a climate. It is autumn in a snow-covered rocky area. There are two polar birds hidden here. Can you see them? There they are. It is almost impossible to distinguish them in their natural habitat because their feathers have a superb camouflage that imitates their natural surroundings. Let us look a little more carefully. The bird's white feathers are an exact copy of the snow. The patches of ground remaining among the snow have been faithfully reproduced on its feathers. Ground and bird are exact copies of each other. It is almost impossible to distinguish them. It is winter, and the snow covers everything. A miraculous change occurs on the bird's body. All its dark feathers disappear, leaving only the white. It is again almost impossible to distinguish the pure white bird amidst the snow. The bird is totally unaware of it. Yet again, its body is perfectly camouflaged. The dark hairs around its eyes stop it being blinded by light reflected from the snow. It is spring. The snow has begun to melt. Plants are pushing up through it. And between the feathers of the birds, new feathers emerge, the green color of the plants. It is summer. The snow has completely melted and the layer of vegetation is green. The polar bird again displays extraordinary camouflage. If you look carefully, you will see that a pre-planned change has again taken place. Its body is covered in feathers that resemble the vegetation. It is again all but impossible to see it. This wonderful display of camouflage requires an explanation, of course. It is naturally impossible for the bird from its own will to have determined the colors of its feathers in accordance with prevailing conditions. It does not have the intelligence even to know what camouflage means. So who is it, in that case, that gives the bird its extraordinary capacity for camouflage? Who knows that the camouflage will need to change as the seasons pass? Who placed the colors and designs of its surrounding on its feathers, just like an artist? These questions lead us to one answer. Allah created the bird and gave it the features it possesses. We can also find masters of camouflage not just in forests or in the snow, but in the depths of the oceans. One of the greatest marine masters of camouflage is perhaps the octopus. Some species of octopus match their colors and designs quite perfectly to the surface over which they are traveling. The octopus you are looking at is an expert mimic, as well as having a splendid technique for camouflage. When it comes to a sandy area against which it is difficult to camouflage itself, its powers of mimicry come into play, and it takes on the form of a piece of seaweed. This octopus sometimes changes shape so expertly that it is impossible to distinguish it from a rock. There is another octopus hidden on this rock, but unless it moves, it is impossible to spot it. At first glance, this fish seems to be concealed in seaweed, but the truth is revealed when we draw back a little. What we see is not seaweed, but a seahorse created in the form of seaweed. This creature, which at first glance resembles a sea sponge, is actually a fish. Thanks to its specially created organ functioning like a fishing rod, it can hunt small fish with ease. There are two lumps on this branch. One, however, is actually a camouflaged spider. It camouflages itself when danger approaches, and the spider becomes indistinguishable from the branch. This spider has no power of thought. So from where does it get the idea of camouflaging itself by mimicking a branch? Such examples are not limited to spiders. For example, there is an insect hidden among these leaves. Look carefully. There is no difference between the insect's body and a leaf. Everything has been flawlessly recreated on the insect's body, from the shape of the leaf right down to its veins. There is another insect behind these yellow leaves. Let us try to find it. There it is, a perfectly camouflaged insect. It is almost impossible to see it on the leaf. The insect mimics the leaf down to the tiniest detail, such as the mark of rot on it. And here is another insect looking exactly like a torn leaf. Let us now consider the design of the camouflage on these animals. These insects possess no power of thought. They do not know they have to disguise themselves as leaves in order to survive. And even if they did, they could not draw a leaf on their bodies. So who is the author of the consciously planned designs on the insect's wings? There is no doubt that the designs are proof of the Creator who brought the insects into being. It is well known that Darwin's theory of evolution claims that all living things are the work of chance. However, the leaf design on the wings of this tiny insect is sufficient to show that living things are the work of the Creator, not chance. If an artist sets out to draw a leaf, He can only make it realistic to a limited degree. But this is not a drawing. It is a perfect three-dimensional model of a leaf placed upon the insect's body. Allah, Lord of all the worlds, created this creature to such a wonderful design and so reveals to us His art and might. This thing swinging on a branch looks at first just like a dry leaf. However, it is no such thing. It is a butterfly cocoon. Thanks to this perfect camouflage given to it by Allah, the caterpillar can complete its development without being seen by its enemies, against which it has no other defense, and can start life as a new butterfly. You are looking at a pink orchid. But in fact, it is not an image of an orchid at all. There is another living thing, completely matching the flower's color and even its shape. It is a praying mantis with its wonderful camouflage. Of course, the mantis itself did not plan the perfect similarity of color, shape, and design of both the mantis and the flower. By this example too, Allah, the creator of all, shows us His art. As Allah revealed in the Qur'an, He is the Almighty Creator. This white spider is waiting for its prey on the very edge of the white part of the flower. In this way, from the point of view of a butterfly that lands in the middle of it, the spider looks just like part of the flower's leaves. The spider is so well camouflaged that sometimes its prey will even land on top of it. The butterfly has a special place among the wonders of camouflage in nature. Some butterfly species have images of enormous eyes on their wings. These false eyes comprise the butterfly's most effective defense mechanism. When the butterfly comes up against any danger, for instance a bird looking for something to eat, it spreads its wings and takes on the appearance of a giant creature. Here is a living example of this tactic. The butterfly on the tree is actually easy prey for the bird. However, the butterfly suddenly spreads wide its wings. The two enormous eyes that appear spell danger to the bird, which swiftly departs. Let us pay careful attention to the perfection of the eye design on the butterfly. Every detail has been reproduced, from its shape, the nose and lashes under the eye, to the pupil, and even the way the pupil reflects the light. On another butterfly's wings, the image of a large creature has been placed with nose, ears, shadows over the eyes, the shape of the eyes, and the pupil and the way it reflects light. There is another very important detail in this camouflage. Butterflies' worst enemies are carnivorous insects such as dragonflies and small birds that feed on insects. And these creatures' greatest enemies are owls. And herein lies an important miracle, because the image on the butterflies' backs is in general a picture of an owl. In other words, the butterfly protects itself by imitating its enemy's enemy, because all small birds and insects are afraid of owls. However, of course the butterfly does not know that owls are its enemy's enemies. Even if it did, it could not draw an owl on its own back. In any case, it lacks the intellect to carry out such a plan. And yet, there is a picture. This is most definitely not a coincidence. It was most certainly created for a particular purpose. To whom does the design of the butterfly's wings belong? Such a design could not come about by chance, as evolutionists maintain. Every design points to a designer, and the design on the butterfly's wings reveals to us the art of Allah's creation. In one verse in the Qur'an, Allah says, "He is Allah, the Creator, the Maker, the Giver of form. To Him belong the most beautiful names. Everything in the heavens and earth glorifies Him. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise." As well as their false eyes, other techniques of butterflies' camouflage are most surprising. It is as if the camouflaged butterflies see the colors of the bush and analyze them, after which they effectively reproduce the colors within their own bodies and thus blend in with the bush. However, it is of course impossible for a butterfly to do all these things. This design on the butterflies is clear evidence of creation. Another master of camouflage is this bird called the patu, which lives in the forests of Venezuela. Its feathers and the bark of the branch on which it lands have been created with an extraordinary resemblance to each other. Let us now pay special attention. You are looking at the tree's bark and the bird's feathers together on the screen. There is a perfect resemblance between the tree on the left and the bird on the right. The only things that could give the bird away are its beak and eyes. However, the bird knows just how to use the design it carries, and it begins acting as soon as danger approaches. It closes its eyes and beak and stretches its head forward. It is now indistinguishable from a piece of branch. There is another extraordinary piece of design here. Even when it closes its eyes, the bird can still see, thanks to special gaps in its eyelids. When the danger recedes, it relaxes again. So, who taught the bird to do this? Here we are again faced with the artistry of Allah. who creates everything flawlessly and uniquely. There is no end to the techniques of camouflage Allah has given living things. Some use objects in their surroundings to conceal themselves. This small fish, for example, is trying to make a safe place for itself by emptying sand out of an oyster shell. And this octopus employs a very clever technique of camouflage. It first gathers mussels and then hides behind the shells, waiting for something to pass by, looking for food among the mussels. We shall shortly witness a surprising act by this crab. It carefully cuts the fronds from a plant that it chooses on the seabed. But what will it do with them? The answer is surprising. It hides itself. The crab arranges the fronds over itself and prepares a cloak of seaweed. It thus comes to possess a wonderful camouflage. Another crab carefully arranges branches it has cut over its shell. That enables it to hide itself easily among plants. Interestingly, the crab secretes a sticky liquid in order to keep the branches in place. In other words, the systems in the animal's body and its behavioral patterns have been created to match one another. This crab is cutting up a sponge. It might sound unlikely, but it is going to sew itself a suit of clothes from this sponge. Then it climbs inside the garment it has prepared. We need to stop and think for a moment here. The crab has never seen itself in a mirror, nor has it any powers of thought or planning. So how does it know it has to camouflage itself? The crab uses the same technique as soldiers do in order to camouflage themselves. It sticks branches and leaves over itself. How has the crab learned this method of camouflage? It is clear that it has been inspired to do this. There is no doubt that it was Allah who created all living things from nothing, who has created the crab and endowed it with this intelligent method of protecting itself. There are other creatures that make covers for themselves and hide in them. These even include larvae, or newly hatched insects. This walking mosaic is nothing other than a larva. The covering it carefully makes by placing tiny stones on itself affords it perfect camouflage. Larva's covering are not all of one type. There are some made out of small pieces of wood, and others that are wider and made from leaves. These creatures are tiny caterpillars that have newly hatched, possess no reason or consciousness, and know nothing about the outside world. So, why do they load stones onto their backs and carry them around? The defenders of Darwin's theory of evolution are desperate in the face of this question. One of these, the German Heumar von Dittfurth, makes the following comment regarding the intelligent behavior of caterpillars in his book, In the Beginning Was Hydrogen. Who is the real author of this intelligent discovery that so amazes people? To whom does this original discovery belong, and from whom does the caterpillar take it over from birth? We have to accept that these are methods that only an intelligent human being could resort to in order to survive. Whereas, it is out of the question for a caterpillar to design such a plan, and for it to carry it out. As evolutionists accept, the camouflage behavior of living things is a method that has been brought about by means of intelligence. Yet the possessor of that intelligence is not the creature which employs it, but another force that rules it. And that is the reality that evolutionists do not wish to accept. Allah created all these wonderful features of living things, and they are proof of His infinite wisdom and knowledge. As we shall see shortly, the golden bird's skill in camouflage, its acting abilities, its courage, and its self-sacrifice astonish people. This bird, which lives in Patagonia, makes its nest in open grassland. The maturing egg in the mother bird's stomach is covered with earth designs just before it is laid. These designs are a special means of protection created to camouflage the egg. Thus, the eggs go unnoticed in the grass. Opens up between the intruder and the bird. It starts imitating the injured bird again. Its aim is to distract the enemy from its nest. When the danger has moved far enough away, the act comes to an end, and the bird flies back to its nest. Opens up between the intruder and the bird. It starts imitating the injured bird again. Its aim is to distract the enemy from its nest. When the danger has moved far enough away, the act comes to an end, and the bird flies back to its nest. The bird certainly displays extraordinary behavior here. It is a huge self-sacrifice for a tiny bird to endanger itself for its young. The theory of evolution certainly does not account for this self-sacrifice. At the basis of Darwinism lies the assumption that every living thing is self-centered. This bird destroys that assumption, and once again demonstrates that Allah inspires living things and that they exhibit intelligent and self-sacrificing behavior. The more we study nature, the more the same truth emerges. Living things possess such well-designed and complex structures that they totally invalidate the theory of evolution's claim of their coming about by chance. Every living thing is a proof of creation. The camouflage and the intelligent behavior you have seen in this film are but a few examples. Every living species in nature possesses its own created characteristics and superior features. The author of all this magnificent creation is Allah, the Lord of the earth and the heavens, and all that lies between. The duty of intelligent people is to ponder on Allah's creation and to praise Him. In a verse in the Qur'an, Allah says, "All praise belongs to Allah, the Lord of the heavens and the Lord of the earth, Lord of all the worlds. All greatness belongs to Him in the heavens and earth. He is the Almighty, the All-Wise."